Alright, good evening ladies and gents, welcome back to Compound Interesting. Happy Valentine's Day, but more importantly, happy Blur Airdrop Day. Today is the big day we've all been waiting for about 6 months. We're getting the Blur Airdrop. Anyone involved in the NFT ecosystem, and even if you're not involved in the NFT ecosystem, the coin is going to be available for trading on all the major platforms such as Coinbase. So if you want to take advantage of the Blur Airdrop, I'd highly recommend you watch this video so you can get an understanding of whether it's worth buying into at what particular valuation, because we're going to discuss all that in today's video. So let's dive straight in. Okay, if you're watching this, the Blur airdrop has already happened, so we know what market cap it's trading at, we know what price the token is going to be. But regardless of that, I'm going to tell you what exactly I'm going to do at various market caps in regards to buying, selling, or just holding. And the other thing I should mention is, if you're claiming this airdrop, just double and triple check you're claiming from the correct website and you're claiming from the correct Twitter handle, because there's going to be scams galore all around. So before you sign anything with your MetaMask, always triple check that. All right, so how can we come up with a realistic valuation for the Blur token? So of course we can look at previous NFT marketplace airdrops, and there's actually been a couple. There's been a couple big ones. The most notable of which was LuxRare. I remember getting that airdrop. That was really nice. LuxRare peaked out at a market cap of $750 million. And let's compare that to Blur now, like in regards to were people actually using LuxRare at the time? Was it a big marketplace? How much volume was it getting? And at the time when the LuxRare airdrop happened, the NFT marketplace and the crypto markets were at a bit of an all-time high, where they were in really bullish territory. So it might be a little bit difficult to completely compare it perfectly fairly, considering right now we're in the depths of a bear market for the Blur drop. Nevertheless, LuxRare didn't even have an exchange, or had no volume before it launched its token. It launched its token and its marketplace at the same time, and the token airdrop was kind of to incentivize people. Oh cool, this new marketplace. LuxRare also had some nice cool new features like collection offers, which weren't available on OpenSea at the time, which is kind of mad to think about. But LuxRare did implement a lot of new cool features at the time, and Blur has actually been implementing cool new features, so there is some similarities there. Okay, so let's look at the volumes for the various NFT marketplaces, and then we can compare the market caps of the coins when they launched. Okay, so for the last number of months, everyone knew this Blur airdrop was coming up, and they knew the more you use the Blur website, or the more you use the marketplace, the more you're gonna get in the Blur airdrop. Okay, so as we can see, this is the volume, and Blur is in yellow and OpenSea is in navy. And as we can see, like, Blur and OpenSea have kind of been battling month to month for who's doing the most volume in that particular month, because most people are trying to farm as much rewards as they can get for this airdrop. So keep that in mind. Blur was doing just about the same amount of volume as OpenSea for the last few months. Now let's compare that to LuxRare. So this going all the way back to just after when LuxRare launched, and LuxRare incentivized people to use their platform by offering more tokens if you listed and if you placed bids, all that kind of thing. So they did incentivize people to use their platform, but even still, they had some volume, but they didn't really make a major dent in OpenSea's volume. Still, OpenSea contained a large majority of the volume. However, when you compare the total volume of LuxRare to Blur, we can see LuxRare at the time was actually did more volume than Blur has done in the last few months. But then again, that is when, like I mentioned, the NFT markets and the crypto markets were really high. So Ethereum was at $3,000, so it's easier to get a lot of volume when Ethereum price is so high. Whereas now Blur doesn't make up quite as much as volume in dollar terms. So the fact that Blur is getting this much volume even in a bear market is quite impressive. But if we're to just use perfect theoretical valuation for LuxRare in comparisons to Blur, just using the dollar volume as an indicator of how much it should be valued at, then obviously Blur should be valued a little bit, well, let's say Blur should peak out at a little bit less than what LuxRare peaked at. So LuxRare peaked at $750 million. So maybe looking at these volume profiles, we could estimate that Blur should peak at about $500 million. So if Blur is trading at a valuation much higher than that, maybe you could consider selling some. And if it's trading at a valuation much lower than that, maybe consider buying some. But let's dive a little bit deeper, because that's a bit simplified. I'm going to give you my exact ranges of what I'm planning to do. So the other difference between Blur and LuxRare is that LuxRare, like I mentioned, never really captured a large proportion of the NFT volume. Like most of the traders were still using OpenSea, but at the time there was a lot of retail traders, not like proper degen traders who were like all in on the NFT ecosystem. But right now Blur has managed to take a large proportion of the total volume. So a lot of people who are investing in NFTs are actually using Blur, not like when LuxRare came out. Still not that many people were using LuxRare despite the incentives. So if you like the UI and the UX of Blur and you think it can really retain its number 2 position and retain the kind of volume that it's been getting for the last few months, or even like somewhat in the range of the volume that it's been seeing for the past few months. Obviously it's going to go down a bit because the incentives are going to be less or gone. However, if you think it can retain like even half or a third of the volume that it's been getting for the last few months, then potentially it should be valued higher than $500 million in market cap if it can really establish itself as the number 2 player in the NFT marketplace. From what I've been hearing, Blur has serious institutional interest. Like these institutional investors really want to invest in marketplaces. Like all the institutional investors that did well invested in Coinbase early. So they want to invest in OpenSea, but the OpenSea, like you can't invest in that publicly. You can only invest in that privately. And it raised at a $12 billion valuation in the peak of the bull run. So they really raised money at an opportune time. But $12 billion. So you can see if Blur is to be the number 2 marketplace, eventually it could be, you know, at least in the billions of dollars in market cap. But nevertheless, these institutional investors really want some exposure to the NFT space, and they don't want to be buying fucking JPEGs. They just want to be buying into the picks and shovels. They want to be investing into the marketplaces themselves. Now, Blur could be a good avenue for that, and I'm seeing some rumors that these institutional investors are valuing Blur at a valuation of $1 billion. So if that happens, that would be crazy in my opinion. I think that's a little bit too high in my personal opinion, considering LuxRare now is $150 million valuation. If we look at previous airdrops, how they performed, initially, people who claimed the airdrop, a lot of them just sold straight away. So the price kind of stabilized for maybe a day or so. And then when those people, all those paper hands, were out of the ecosystem, then the prices pumped for a couple of days. So let's show you some examples. Let's look at the LuxRare price. You can see it pumped like 2 or 3x and then crashed and then just kind of never came back. And this is actually the market cap, not even the coin price. And there's been new coins released into the market, so the coin has performed worse than this market cap chart. I just wanted to show you the market cap because, you know, it's easier. It'll be easier to think about whatever Blur opens at. Here's another chart of X2Y2, another NFT marketplace, and you can see again it pumped really hard and then immediately a couple of days after just crashed really hard and then never really came back. But let me just show you on a log scale so you can see what happened. So it pumped initially and then crashed and then just kind of stayed the same, eventually crashed, but it's making a bit of a comeback now. Another airdrop was the OpenDAO airdrop. This again pumped initially and then just kind of faded away into nothing. And I can show you the same thing happened with ENS, Ethereum Name Service, and plenty of other airdrops that people got for free. So kind of the play is, if history is anything to go by, like, this is how I'm going to play it anyway, but maybe just steady your horses rather than selling immediately. Maybe take a day or maybe dollar cost average out if you're planning on selling the airdrop. And if you're planning to buy this Blur token, the best time to buy probably is immediately from the people who are selling. But what kind of ranges of market caps? How am I going to play it? Because there's no point buying it if it opens at like a $2 billion valuation. I think that's way overpriced, and there's no point selling it if it's going to be like under $100 million valuation, because that would be also way underpriced. What I'm likely to do if it opens, if you're watching this video later on today, if it opens well under $200 million in market cap, I'll probably be buying more. And if it opens anywhere between $200 to $500 million in market cap, I'll just be holding it, and after a few days, probably DCAing out if it opens over $500 million, I will straight away start DCAing out of the position, because I think that's probably a little bit overpriced, and it's eventually going to settle at around $100 to $200 million in market cap, eventually, in my opinion. And if it opens over $1 billion in market cap, I'll probably just sell it all. That's how I'm planning on playing this. But to reiterate, I think there's going to be a lot of FOMO around this coin when it initially launches, and I could definitely see it if it opens at like $300 million. I could easily see it 3 or 4 or 5xing up to like well over $1 billion in valuation for a day or two, spiking up like that. I think there could be a lot of FOMO on volatility initially, and it might just pump really, really high. And at that point, when it's over $1 billion, I think that's probably a smart play, a smart opportunity to potentially sell some. And if it opens well under 200 million or even under like 400 million, that could be a quick opportunity to buy and sell in a few days. But definitely, I wouldn't really hold this over the very long term. I think in a few months, you'll be able to buy it at a cheaper valuation, no matter what price it opens at today. So hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something. Can't wait to see you in the next one. Cheers.